Tonight, no shifting of dates for the general elections. INEC National Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu says that the Commission is ready to conduct the polls as scheduled during his presentation at Chatham House in London. APC campaign trail moves to Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. Party's presidential candidate, Senator Bola Tinubu, asks the people to cement their freedom by voting the APC in next month's election. And PDP presidential candidate promises to upgrade infrastructure in Ekiti State as he takes his campaign to Ado-Ekiti, the state capital.
On business news tonight, Nigeria emerges top oil producer in Africa as crude oil output increases to 1.23 million barrels per day in December 2022.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, some former governors call for action by the people to ensure that politicians fulfill their campaign promises. Civil society organizations advocate litigation as a more appropriate measure.
International news from London. It has emerged that the co-pilot of the ill-fated flight that crashed in Nepal lost her husband in a plane crash 16 years earlier.
The date for this year's general elections are cast in stone, and that's according to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, who made his presentation at Chatham House, London, earlier today. Well, Professor Yakubu, who was speaking in his capacity as the head of Nigeria's electoral umpire, is the latest to make presentations on the forthcoming elections before the independent policy think tank. Professor Yakubu also seized the opportunity to assure the international community of INEC's impartiality and a resolve to meet the expectations of Nigerians. Our London correspondent, Juliana Lainka, reports.
This coming election in the continent's most populous country is shaping up to be an exceptional event. The fanfare and theatrics that had accompanied previous speakers at Chatham House was strikingly absent today. In its place, though, a strong feeling of enormous expectations, which Professor Yakubu attempted to ease.
It is exactly 38 days to the next general election in Nigeria, which I have both the privilege and challenge of leading its proper delivery. Elections in Nigeria have become events that attract extensive international attention and concern, not only because of the sheer size of the deployment, but also because of the importance of Nigeria in Africa, and most particularly in the West Africa sub-region. Understandably, therefore, there are enormous expectations, both within Nigeria and internationally, about the conduct and management of the 2023 general election. The expectations place a great responsibility on the election management body, the Independent National Electoral Commission. We are not taking these responsibilities lightly. We appreciate that there are challenges and concerns, but we also realize that there is enormous goodwill and support, both in Nigeria and beyond. Consequently, we believe that by forthrightly sharing our experiences and discussing the challenges openly, we can surmount the challenges and ensure that our elections in Nigeria continue to get better. May I, on this note, once again reiterate our position that the Commission is not contemplating, let alone planning, to postpone the 2023 general election. We are going ahead to conduct the election as scheduled.
Free, fair, and credible elections is what the Commission chief has promised the international community. But the threats facing Nigeria are multiple and widespread.
A lot of vote buying and vote selling transactions have to do with the level of ballot secrecy. So how is INEC going to improve and guarantee ballot secrecy in the upcoming elections?
The BVAS system has been used before, but not without teething problems, especially in the recent governorship election. What guarantees can you give to the Nigerian people that all the problems have been ironed out and it's going to work properly when it's counting 90 million votes?
But We have the machines for the 2023 general elections, but we didn't want to take chances. Each and every machine has been tested and confirmed that the machine is functional. So actually for the last 2 weeks or so, our officials were in all the states of the Federation testing those machines. And the functionality of the machines is simply very encouraging. So we'll not take chances. The second thing we are going to do, and pretty soon, is to conduct mock accreditation exercise nationwide ahead of the election. But what is all this talk about vote buying? It is also for us an indication of the progress that we are making in our democracy, because it is becoming increasingly clear to everyone that the votes are counting at the end of the day, and I've said this consistently, is enforcement of the laws. There are laws, but the laws are not enforced. So let me seize the opportunity to renew our appeal as a commission for the National Assembly in Nigeria to speedily pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill.
Discourse at this Royal Institute of International Affairs, though important, is unlikely to influence voters back home. While INEC can assure the international community it is doing all it can to tackle logistical delays, violence, fraud and vote buying, what actually occurs on February the 25th will be recorded in the legacy of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Juliana Olayinka, Channels TV News, London.
Meanwhile, the presidential candidate of the new Nigeria People's Party, Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, will appear at Chatham House tomorrow to speak on his policy ideas ahead of next month's election. The channel's television will bring you the live stream of his presentation from London at 2 p.m. Nigerian time, and you can watch it on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. Back home to the campaign trail now, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Bola Tinubu, has been campaigning in Kwara State, where he asked the people to vote for him and other APC candidates if they wish to build on what he described as the freedom from exploitation which they achieved 4 years ago. The rally in Ilorin, the state capital, was attended by a mammoth crowd that thronged the Metropolitan Square venue of the event. We apologize for the audio loss. I will come back to that report in a moment. But let's head over to Rivers State now, where Governor Nyesom Wike says the February and March polls will define who the real politicians are, as those who place their interests above the state will be rejected at the elections. Well, Governor Wike was speaking during the campaign rally of the Rivers State chapter of the People's Democratic Party in Ikwere local government area, where the governorship candidate, Simini Alayi Fubara, promised to lead Rivers to greater prosperity.
The campaign train of the People's Democratic Party in Rivers State stops over in Umagwa of Ikwere local government area amidst exciting reception for Governor Wike and his entourage by supporters of the party. It's day 2 of the party's local government tour, which is aimed at conversing for votes to retain the PDP in power, and for them, nothing can hinder that aspiration.
Well, I want to start by thanking all of you for mobilizing our people in this Pullman crowd to welcome our leader. This is the second flag off of our 23 local government after Onelga. What I'm seeing here today is a show of solidarity. I want to praise and thank the good people of Ikwere local government for coming out in their numbers to welcome the campaign council. I present this flag to B.S. Emerengwa.
The symbolic presentation of PDP's flag to the legislative candidate is performed by the state chairman of the party. The governorship candidate, in company of his running mate, promises to consolidate on Governor Wike's achievements.
Where our principal will stop, we will complete and continue from there. So our mission is to tell you, continue to support us for continuity and consolidation. Consolidation of the few roads that are remaining in the Ikwere local government, we will do it. Your health services, we will improve on them and upgrade them.
For Governor Governor Wike, a vote for Fubara is a vote for the continuation of his governance model, even as he promises to execute more projects.
These people will have voted for you to support them. You know, before I do anything, I would have checked very well, because I know what politics is all about. Do you understand me? I'm not sure they will give you 100%, but I know they will not disappoint you. Do you understand me? I know they will not disappoint you. There are people who will still follow and make sure where we stop, they will continue. And that's why they say continuity and consolidation.
The confidence of the candidates apparently stems from the achievement of the Nyesom Wike-led administration, which will play a pivotal role in the decision of the electorate on election day.
But elsewhere, Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State says he will continue to campaign for candidates of the PDP in his state, but again, it made no mention of whom he or the G5 governors will support for president. But Governor Ortom, who appears ready for a quick resolution of the crisis within PDP, says it is up to the leadership of the party to spearhead reconciliation moves. Well, he gave this indication at a statewide tour of the party in Buruku, Boko, and Taka communities in the state.
Members of the People's Democratic Party in Benue State are in Taka, the hometown of the Minister of Special Duties, Mr. George Akume, who is a leader of the All Progressives Congress in the state. Some of the supporters of the minister joined the campaign train of the PDP. They are also joined by some family members of the former Benue State governor. They're promising to work for the victory of the PDP.
My brothers and sisters, enough of this deceit. This government has been able to do nothing. The government has failed. We need a change.
The team also takes the campaign to Buruku community, where the governor states his readiness to campaign for all candidates of the party, while hoping that the presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, hastens his reconciliation moves.
Whatever we have is an internal crisis within ourselves, and until we're able to sort them out, and I've always said that the national leadership of the party should brace up to its responsibility and address all those matters. PDP is intact. You've seen what we have done in Taka local government, how many people decamped. That should be the home of APC. But you can see that the performance of APC in Benue State cannot win vote.
Immediately after this campaign is over, we'll start going word by word to ensure that we get the votes from the villagers who have been confused by some of these things that you're talking about. I assure you there will be no problem, but we are not taking anything for granted.
The party in the state is hoping that the reconciliation between the governor and the presidential candidate is urgently resolved to ensure a successful outing during the 2023 general elections.
Part two after the break, as political campaigns heat up, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, warns against incitement by politicians. So that's the moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television. A reminder of our main stories. No shifting of dates for the general elections. INEC National Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu says the Commission is ready to conduct the polls as scheduled during its presentation at Chatham House, London. APC campaign trail moves to Ilorin, the Kwara state capital. The party's presidential candidate, Senator Bola Tinubu, asks the people of the state to cement their freedom by voting the APC in the coming elections. The PDP presidential candidate promises to upgrade infrastructure in Ekiti State as he takes his campaign to Ado-Ekiti, the state capital. And reports indicate the co-pilot of the ill-fated flight that crashed in Nepal lost her husband in a plane crash 16 years earlier. Well, let's now take you back to our story on the campaigns of a presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Bola Tinubu, who's been in Kwara State, where he asked the people to vote for him and other candidates if they wish to build on what he described as the freedom from exploitation which they achieved 4 years ago.
The APC presidential candidate, Senator Bola Tinubu, and his team arrived in the Metropolitan Square in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. They're here to solicit for votes from the people of Kwara ahead of the 2023 general elections, which starts with the presidential election on February 25. Addressing party supporters, the governor of Kwara State, Abdul Rahman Abdul Razak, commends them for their support for the party's presidential candidate, asking them to come out en masse to cast their vote for the APC in all the elections.
APC, ladies and gentlemen, party people, I urge you to support and vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The progress we have in this state, the progress we've been having will continue. We'll continue with that progress. He is going to bring so many things to Kwara State.
Next to speak is the APC flag bearer, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He tells them not to deviate from the path of freedom which APC brought to them in 2019.
Today we are just celebrating freedom. We are reassessing and reasserting our freedom in a democracy. On the February 25th, they're going to bring you out to vote for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, no other choice. You don't vote for anybody else. You vote for me.
Jagaban!
The national chairman of the party, Abdullahi Adamu, and the director general of its campaign council remind the people of the importance of the 2023 elections, adding that they are important stakeholders in the Nigerian project.
Better together. With what we have seen today, I need no Dogon Turanchi, I need no Dogon Hausa, or Dogon Igbo, or Dogon Yoruba. You have spoken. Vote for the President Asiwaju. Vote for our senators, the Turaki of Ilorin.
There is no doubt. We have seen it. On behalf of the campaign council, is to thank you and is to expect that this same crowd will be more than this after 25th of February. And that will be in our vote.
The event was attended by APC members across the 16 local government areas of the state.
And in neighboring Ekiti State, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, is promising to construct and rehabilitate roads in the state if he is elected president next month. Well, he made the vow during his campaign in Ado-Ekiti, the state capital, where he also said his administration will ensure that the human resources in Ekiti State will be utilized. The campaign had in attendance several leaders in the PDP, both at the national and state level, while the former governor of Ekiti State, Mr. Ayafashi, was absent.
The chopper carrying Mr. Atiku Abubakar flies into Ado-Ekiti, the Ekiti State capital, and is welcomed by his supporters. Mr. Abubakar's first port of call in Ekiti, the fountain of knowledge, is the palace of the Ewi of Ado-Ekiti, where the monarch highlights some of the challenges of his people and their expectations.
When I came 31 years ago, I met the textile industry. The textile industry that employed close to 1,000 people that time, but no more. Most factories. and we turn out. There are thousands every year to university and continue to open more universities. I'm saying this was university, and there's no work for them to do.
We want to assure you that if our party is elected into office, we shall continue to accord recognition to this institution and, of course, also undertake reforms as will be recommended by yourselves in order that we can continue to protect and make sure our traditional institutions remain relevant and contemporary, with our political dispensations.
He also met with some religious leaders in the state before heading to the Ekiti Parapo Pavilion, where supporters are already waiting for him. The PDP presidential candidate goes round the venue in his vehicle to greet the people. As the campaign train settles down, the event kickstarts with the campaign council members and the PDP leadership indulging the people on the need to vote for the party's candidates during the 2023 general elections.
We know that you are intellectually endowed, and we know your capacities. When, and not if, by the grace of God, Atiku Abubakar comes on board, he will, by the grace of God, strengthen the Copyright Commission.
From now onwards, we shall have not just a new president, but we'll try and rebuild the party in the Ekiti state.
The leadership of the PDP also presents the party's flag to some candidates vying for elective positions in the state, including Senator Abiodun Olujimi. For Atiku Abubakar, the resilience shown by his supporters is laudable.
Before we came here, some people said we were not going to see anybody in Ekiti. We now realize what they meant was to cripple public transportation in Ado-Ekiti today. All the roads that connect you to other states, we shall construct them.
The PDP campaign is attended by top officials of the party in Ekiti State. However, the former governor of the state, Mr. Ayodele Fayose, is conspicuously absent from the event. Perhaps this may not be unconnected with a rift between Mr. Abubakar and the 5 PDP governors, known as the G5, led by Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
As politicians canvass for votes ahead of the general elections, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, is asking them to guard their utterances against incitement. The Speaker stated this as the lawmakers held the first plenary of 2023, the last year in the life of the 9th Assembly. Meanwhile, a bill to make the NYSC optional for Nigerian students who wish to continue their education abroad without returning to the country has been stepped down by the lawmakers. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
Excited to see each other again, members of the House of Representatives exchange pleasantries as the Speaker makes his way to preside over the first plenary of the year. He commences with a welcome address and charges his colleagues on good conduct ahead of the elections.
There has been a marked increase in incidents of insecurity and vicious attacks on political actors in parts of the country. We must unite to ensure this dangerous trend does not lead to circumstances that threaten the forthcoming elections. The quality of the political conversations in society, particularly in the lead-up to elections, is a determining factor in the electoral outcomes and the quality of governance that will result therefrom. As leaders in our various communities and constituencies, we must adopt a politics of accommodation and brotherhood. And we must ensure that no insecurity threatening our country's peace can be attributed to our actions or utterances.
A motion on the need for the federal government to intensify efforts in curbing the incessant kidnappings in Nigeria is taken and adopted.
The House resolved to condemn in strong terms the kidnapping and disappearance of Mr. Enobon Williamson and other incidences of kidnapping across the country. Mandate the Inspector General of Police and other security agencies to intensify efforts in securing the release of Mr. Enobong Williamson from the den of kidnappers.
Next, a consolidated bill to amend the NYSC Act is presented for second reading but rejected by the House.
The amendment is bringing in people that school outside the country, and if they are schooling, maybe you can go do first degree, do second degree, and even do doctorate. Before coming back, they will have crossed the age of service. And when they come, issuance of certificate of exemption should be made flexible. I don't think it is right for us to begin to encourage having two sets of laws for different for the same citizens of Nigeria. Whether you are schooling outside the country is about opportunity. Those who are schooling within here might have wished to go outside the country. That you have now been situated and then put to this kind of whatever situation to school here should not be used as a disadvantage against any of our citizens.
Honorable Ibakpa is compelled to step down the bill for further consultation, just as lawmakers express optimism that some other portions of the bill to improve the welfare of core members would be considered when the bill is reintroduced in the near future. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Well, Terry has more stories from outside the National Assembly this time, so let's join him in our Abuja studio. Good evening, Terry. It's over to you now.
Good evening, Coyote. It's indeed politics related. Now, have you ever wondered why some politicians make promises in the run-up to elections but never fulfill them? Well, some former governors have been explaining why. The former governors who were speaking at a dialogue on tracking campaign promises for good governance in Abuja say there is need for proper gatekeeping by the people. However, civil society organizations are advocating litigation when campaign promises are not kept by politicians. Our correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
23 years into Nigeria's return to civil rule and 5 major election cycles after, politicians inundate the people with promises of El Dorado if given the chance to rule. And for the most part, people vote these politicians in because they believe these promises. However, time has shown that these promises are sometimes forgotten by the politicians once they get into office. This has caused great disaffection among the people. And as another election looms, the need to ensure accountability for these promises is highlighted at this one-day dialogue organized by the Nigeria Politics online platform by a former National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission.
Then we might be talking of the need to amend our constitution to make campaign advertisement a component part of our constitution, the basis of which can be litigated upon. That would be very challenging in view of the fact that there are other competing areas where constitutional amendments are more desirable than on campaign promises. But definitely, there's a need to raise campaign promises to the front burner.
Panelists call out past leaders for failing to keep their campaign promises and deceiving the Nigerian people by taking advantage of the fact that an accountability mechanism does not exist in Nigeria's laws. Some former governors tried to explain why this trend continues to happen.
Are you really sure that the citizenry base their vote on promises? Especially when populism reigns. You may discover that the people don't even remember the promises that have been made by politicians.
Campaign promises are made because those who intend to come and drive governance have good intentions to do such things. Usually they make campaign promises outside government before election. At the point you are elected, the reality now dawns on you. You now begin to see what is doable and what is not doable.
The conversations at today's event have thrown up quite a number of questions. Chapter 2 of the Constitution is non-justiciable, so even when politicians fail on their campaign promises, they cannot be sued. And there's the fact that a lot of these politicians enjoy immunity. So how do we ensure that there's gatekeeping, ensuring that these campaign promises are actually delivered on? The conversation will continue. However, it is important that Nigerians themselves take up the baton and insist that those who make these promises keep them when they're in office. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Well, still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria emerges top oil producer in Africa as crude output increases to 1.2 million barrels per day in December 2022. That's on business news. To stay with us. Welcome back to the news at 10. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has called for national consensus on ethical revolution and teaching of the right values at all levels of education in order to address corruption and other challenges impeding the growth and progress of the country. He made the call in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, while delivering the keynote address at the centennial celebration of the Baptist Boys High School. He also challenged the political elite and their religious counterparts to rise to the occasion and drive national development.
There's a need for a national consensus, or at least an elite consensus. The political elite, the religious elite, and the business elite must agree that our country will fail completely if we do not accept and implement an ethical revolution. One where we establish a national work ethic of honesty, of hard work, of thrift, and the deferment of gratification. It is what is taught and learned that shapes the character of individuals and nations. But it's not just teaching. Governments must also lead this ethical revolution by rewarding ethical behavior and ensuring speedy punishment for misconduct. The religious elite, our religious elite, must reinforce the ethical direction agreed by showing that wealth and influence are built by hard work and diligence and the deferment of gratification, and not just by miracles.
Well, back to the National Assembly we go, where the Senate President, Senator Ahmed Lawan, is warning officials of the executive arm of government to urgently furnish the upper chamber with the details required to process the President's request for the restructuring of the 23.7 trillion naira Ways and Means advances. He gave this warning after the majority leader informed the Senate that the absence of the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the finance minister, who were out of town recently, had hampered the work of the ad hoc committee set up to scrutinize the request. Our correspondent Linda Akibe has more details.
Warm greetings among federal legislators as they attend the first plenary session in 2023. Senate President Ahmed Lawan welcomes his colleagues, reminding them of some urgent matters which require prompt legislative action, such as President Buhari's request for the National Assembly to restructure 23.7 trillion naira Ways and Means advances. President Buhari's request has raised eyebrows among lawmakers and financial analysts who are worried about the legality and Nigeria's debt stock intensified by this loan.
Between now and the next week, when we hope to close, we have some other things to attend to. But this Ways and Means, I think, stands out.
But the committee, which was set up to interface with the finance minister and CBN governor to get more details of the 27.3 trillion naira Ways and Means advances, has not made much progress.
We came up about 6 questions for the Minister of Finance, because there are 2 of them. The Minister of Finance and also the Governor of Central Bank. But unfortunately, we were not able to get the information that we are looking for. Why? Because the 2 of them were out of town.
Displeased by the majority leader's submission, the Senate President issues a warning to the CBN Governor and Finance Minister.
But let me also advise the executive arm of government. The Ways and Means request for approval before the Senate is a serious issue. The National Assembly or the Senate is prepared to consider the request, but we must have the necessary information. So it's for the executive arm of government to expedite action, and I imagine that this is not supposed to be a difficult thing to do.
On the 2023 general elections, which is to begin on February 25th, Senate President Ahmed assures Nigerians that the National Assembly will support electoral body INEC and other government agencies devoted to ensuring free and fair elections. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And that's all from Abuja. The news continues from Lagos with Kayode.
Well, thanks a lot, Terry. Let's head outside the country now, where President Muhammadu Buhari has received an award for strengthening peace in Africa at an event in Mauritania. According to presidential spokesman Mr. Femi Adesina, the award is for the president's leadership role in promoting peace on the continent. He adds that the award is presented to President Buhari by the Abu Dhabi Peace Forum, which is an assembly of leaders established in 2014 to pursue new ways to embrace inclusive citizenship, promote lasting peace, and work towards a safer and more sustainable world for everyone. Well, let's switch gears now on the news at 10, and Nwaudo is standing by with the latest business stories.
Kayode. Hello and welcome to Business News. Nigeria emerged as Africa's top oil producer last month, and that's after its crude output increased to 1.235 million barrels per day, which is higher than the 1.186 million barrels per day it produced in November last year. According to the latest monthly oil market report released today by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, the figure pushed Angola to second phase at 1,088 million barrels per day, while Algeria took third place at 1,099 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, the Buhari-led administration has pegged the country's 2023 budget to a crude oil production benchmark rate of 1.69 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, has given an optimistic outlook for the world's economy this year. It has forecast global oil demand to rise by 2.22 million barrels per day, and that's about 2.2%. In its latest oil market report, OPEC has attributed the expected rebound on Tuesday Chinese oil demand for the year 2023, which has been forecast to grow by 510,000 barrels per day this year. And this is due to relaxation of the country's COVID-19 curbs and drive global growth. At the same time, OPEC says its oil production output in the month of December last year rose by 91,000 barrels to 28.97 million barrels per day. The prolonged dispute between Russia and Ukraine has forced the European Union to diversify its dependence on Russian fuel and focus on building renewable energy infrastructure. The president of the European Commission also made this known at the opening of the 2023 World Economic Forum in Davos. He hinted that Nigeria and other African countries have now become the new replacement for Russia. She explains that the EU has cut several partnerships with Russia, and that's over the invasion of Ukraine. It's also willing to invest 300 billion euros in Africa for the next 5 years as it sees new opportunities to meet its energy demand for the continent. And from there, we head to the market, where the ended Tuesday's trading session on a positive note, gaining 192 billion naira at the close of trade today. John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the stock market report. Well, we had hoped for a recovery, and we got a recovery. That's right. The NGX closed positive today with the all-share index at 0.67%. And we're keeping that 52,000 there, 52,701.31 for the all-share index. And the market gained about 190 billion looking at the market cap. That is why the bull is back. So let's take a look at the sectors. Now, yesterday, remember, the most liquid sector was down, really down. Well, today they have recovered 0.19% because most of those tier 1 and tier 2 banks have recovered. So thank God for that. And then the consumer goods back up even more than the banking at 0.53%. Oil and gas sustains the positive that it had from yesterday. Now, who is the market mover for today? Even though we have this much green, but the market mover is Airtel Africa. Airtel Africa closed after trading 1.14 billion naira and added 50 kobo to its share price, driving the market to positive sentiment. So a good recovery. We hope to build on that tomorrow. That's the stock market report. It's back to you, Ini John Mekwa.
Night. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawodo. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Kayode.
Well, thanks a lot, Anne. Well, one more politics story for you. The wife of the APC presidential candidate, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, is calling on women in the southeast to shun ethnic and religious sentiments in the presidential election. Well, Senator Tinubu is urging the women to vote competence, capacity and experience, which she says the party's presidential candidate and her husband, as well as his running mates, represent. She was speaking at the Tinubu-Shetima Women's Southeast Zonal Rally at the Ndubuisi Kanu Square in Owerri, the Imo State capital, where she also debunked insinuations that she does not love the Igbo people.
This is the Tinubu-Shetima Women Presidential Campaign Team Southeast Zonal Rally, and it's happening here at the Ndubuisi Kanu Square in Owerri, the Imo State capital. Supporters of the APC, especially women, support groups and associations attired in colorful dresses from Imo, Abia, Ebonyi, Enugu and Anambra, as well as some South-South states, also graced the event. The Southeast Women Coordinator for the APC Presidential Campaign and the wife of the Governor of Imo State, Chioma Uzodinma, asked Southeast women to join the moving train, while the wife of the APC Presidential candidate, Remi Tinubu, advises women in the region to vote for competence.
We must market our achievements, our party and our candidates in the best way we can. And God helping us, we shall emerge victorious. We are going to sweep it clean for APC from bottom to top.
What we are saying, we are all Nigerians and we all deserve a seat on the table. And God will help us. So vote for APC, vote for progress.
For Governor Hope Uzodinma, this rally presents another opportunity to reiterate his position for the Southeast region to support the party at the center.
What you require to be a president in Nigeria is not only the highest vote, but you must also score 25% in 2/3 of the states. And we have 36 states. And Southeast, we have only 5 states. And even without 5 states, a presidential candidate can still get to 3rd. So it means that the vehicle can move without Southeast.
On your mandate, Bola, on your mandate. On your mandate, we shall start.
This is the second time in the last 3 months that the Tinubu-Shetima Women Presidential Campaign Team Southeast Zone is organizing a rally ahead of the February presidential election. They expect that the attendance and crowd at the rally will indeed translate to victory during the polls.
But to education now, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Lagos, Professor Folashade Ogunshola, says the institution is on the path to becoming a solution provider and one that is future-ready. And part of her strategies of achieving this is through financial re-engineering, human capital investment, and an unrelenting international networking process. She was speaking during her investiture as the 13th Vice-Chancellor of the over 60-year-old university.
The main auditorium of the University of Lagos hosts top brass within the education sector. With them is former President Olusegun Obasanjo. All gather here for the investiture ceremony of the 13th Vice-Chancellor of the university, Professor Folashade Ogunshola. She also happens to be the first female Vice-Chancellor of the university of first choice.
It is such a distinct honor to have met
The visitor to the university is represented by the Deputy Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission. He considers the choice of Professor Ogunshola as a well-thought-out one. He seizes the occasion to challenge university management nationwide to build global citizens in students and build reward systems based on hard work and excellence.
The process of performance evaluation in our universities has increasingly left much to be desired. There's a gradual erosion of order in assessments and promotions at all levels. The intellectual space has shrunken to the extent that there is a subversion of the age-long and most cherished tradition and prestige of the academia. You must, out of necessity, ensure that the reward system is based on hard work and academic credibility.
With those charged, Professor Ogunshola is roped and then presented with instruments of office, including a scroll containing her appointment letter and the University of Lagos maize. She unveils a blueprint to making the university future-ready.
We need as a country to remember the centrality of the university for national development. My strategic plan is to make UNILAG future-ready, yielding inquiring minds, discoveries, sound character, and a globally impactful workforce, while addressing the developmental needs of today.
Professor Ogunshola's 5-year tenure began last November the 12th and will run till November the 11th, 2027.
Bola Rahim, the lawyer who was shot dead in an incident involving a policeman on Christmas Day, has been buried in the Ikoyi area of Lagos State. Family, colleagues and friends gathered today at the Olive Tree Parish of the Redeemed Christian Church, Banana Island, for the funeral service, which preceded her interment at the Vaults and Gardens, Mayfair Cemetery. And now to the foreign scene, where the United Nations says India is expected to overtake China as the world's most populous country this year, even though its population growth has been slowing down. Simon Pusey has more international news and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. It has emerged that the co-pilot of the ill-fated flight that crashed in Nepal lost her husband in a plane crash 16 years earlier. Anju Katiwada was co-piloting Yeti Airlines Flight 691 when it smashed into a gorge near the tourist town of Pokhara, killing all on board in the country's worst air disaster in 30 years. Her husband, Deepak Pokhrel, had also been co-piloting a Yeti Airlines flight when he died. This week's tragedy has reignited a conversation about airline safety in the Himalayan nation, which has seen hundreds die in air accidents in recent decades. An iconic image of a family kitchen in Ukraine has gone viral after a Russian missile strike in Dnipro killed 40 people. The pictures of a bright family kitchen in Ukraine contrast starkly to the rubble and ruin surrounding it, and have caused shock and sadness on social media. A bowl of apples sits on the table, dishes lie next to the sink waiting to be washed. A video of the family that once lived there celebrating a recent birthday has also been published, demonstrating once much happier times. Hundreds of London's police officers faced the sack after the Met's police commissioner announced a clean-up of the force. The Metropolitan Police is investigating 1,000 sexual and domestic abuse claims involving about 800 of its officers, the commissioner has said. It comes after PC David Carrick pleaded guilty to 49 offences, including dozens of rapes. Sir Mark Rowley announced all 45,000 Met officers and staff would be rechecked for previously missed offending.
I've launched an anti-corruption and abuse command. I've got 30% more officers into that. We've done public and internal appeals, which has generated more than 250 more investigations. We're systematically reviewing every member of police staff and police officer who we have any historic flags against for being involved in any incident involving domestic abuse or sexual violence. I'm sure some of those will turn out to be nothing of concern, but many of them will turn out sadly to be of concern. And I've been candid. I've got tens of thousands of fantastic men and women, but I've got hundreds who shouldn't be here. I'm going to sort it out.
China's population has fallen for the first time in 60 years, with the nation birth rate hitting a national low. The population in 2022, 1.418 billion, fell by 850,000 from 2021. China's birth rate has been declining for years, prompting a slew of policies to try to slow the trend. But 7 years after scrapping the one-child policy, it has entered what one official described as an era of negative population growth. It's the first time the population in the country has gone down since 1961. Drone footage shows the extent of the damage on an oil tanker ship, where an explosion killed at least one and injured several others in Bangkok. Aerial footage shows a small fire still burning inside the ship as firefighters try to contain the flames. Thai authorities reported that one person had been killed while revising the number of injured to 10. There were a total of 16 people on board, while the origins of the blast are yet to be confirmed. A live stream from social media yesterday showed thick black plumes of smoke billowing from the Smooth C-22, an oil tanker stationed southwest of the capital. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg has taken part in another protest march in Germany against the expansion of a coal mine. Video showed her walking in a demonstration around the mining village of Luet-Zerath. It's after she was removed by police on Sunday along with other protesters when she did not comply with a police request to leave the area, prompting officers to physically escort her away. And the Democratic Republic of Congo is preparing for a visit by the Pope at the end of January. The attempt to give a facelift to the city of over 17 million people comes 2 weeks before the visit of Pope Francis. However, there has been tensions over the clean-up as many families in the city depend on the so-called informal sector, which includes street stalls and side shops. The Vatican says Francis will visit the DRC from January the 31st to February the 3rd and then spend 2 days in South Sudan alongside the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Ayotunde. And the main news again. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu today said the Commission is ready to conduct the 2023 general elections as scheduled. He made the declaration during his presentation at the Chatham